get into the breakout room with the rest of the guys.
Okay, I'm doing the recording here itself. So, okay. All right. Well, hello and welcome everyone. And as you all know, this is a regular series that we have been doing since past couple of months now. To start with, I would again like to set the stage what this is not about. So, this is not about blaming or maligning any name, place, person, or religion as such. Neither this is about raising any questions on what has been done or how it has been done. Rather, this is just an exercise or a session to learn from our past, to know more about what we have achieved, what we have done, to respect our leaders, to respect our nations, and above all, to respect the armed forces for the fantastic efforts and the things that they have done for us to lead a comfortable life out here. Before I begin talking, I would like to mention that I have sourced this information from internet books and other references, and I do not claim any right on information apart from the way that I have laid out this whole thing in my presentation. And please pardon me if I have missed to quote any references. It is completely unintentional. So far we have covered 3 wars, and today in the we have covered 1947 to start with, 62 with the China, 65 with Pakistan, and today we'll be discussing about 97 war with Pakistan. And I will try to keep it interesting and will not make it a mundane presentation to my best of the ability. As we all know, that Bangladesh was formed. As we all know that Bangladesh was formed as a result of 1971 war. However, this is a story of not just about liberation of Bangladesh, but also about what has happened before the war that led to that particular war, and then what has happened after the war. So we'll try touching upon all the events in the detail, and then we'll ponder the results of the war that happened later on. Before we move further, let's introduce ourselves with the key actors of the situation. Though this is not about just these faces, but yes, will be touching these references will be coming again and again. So I would like to make everyone comfortable here of who all these are. We all know she is Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister of India during that time. Then this is Yahya Khan. Yahya Khan was the then president of Pakistan, and before president, he was the commander-in-chief of Pakistani army. He superseded Muhammad Ayub Khan, who had to resign from presidency of Pakistan in 1969. We have touched about Muhammad Ayub Khan in our previous discussion. Then this was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. This is Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He was, at that time, he was Pakistani foreign minister, who later became the president and then the prime minister of the Pakistan. And he met a very tragic end in future. Then this is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Now, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was a very famous leader of East Pakistan or Bangladesh, which we now know. So he was a very famous leader of East Pakistan and the leader of Awami League. It was a political party. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman later also came to be known as father of nation of Bangladesh. So he was the key person who was very crucial in the liberation of in the war of liberation of Bangladesh. Then let's come to on the Indian side again. He is SHFJ Sam Manekshaw. Sam Manekshaw, we also call him with love Sam Bahadur. He was the chief of army staff, and he was one of the hero of this 1970 war. And he is my personal favorite. I might sound a bit biased towards him. He is chief of naval staff. He is Sardari Lal Marathana Nanda, SM Nanda, famously known as SM Nanda. He was then chief of naval staff. He is Air Chief Marshal Pratap Chandra Lal. And then on this side, this is US President Nixon. Richard Nixon. He was the then US president. And he is Henry Kissinger. He is the US National Security Advisor during that time. And finally, this is Leonid Brezhnev. I don't know.
Yes, Brezhnev.
I might not be sounding correct, but Brezhnev is how it's spelled, Brezhnev. He was the General Secretary of Communist Party of Soviet Union. So these references will come again and again during my presentation. So that's why I thought of introducing them early on. Moving further, again, before we start talking about the events and or the war, let's familiarize ourselves with the geography. It is important that we understand the geographical area, though we all must be very familiar with this already, but let me quickly touch base upon that again. Well, back in 1971, Pakistan was bifurcated into two geographical landmass. It was West Pakistan on the western side, and then East Pakistan, which is now known as Bangladesh here on the eastern side. This was one country, though it was one country, but it was separated by a pious landmass called India, right? So this is around, so if they have to come from west to east, they have to fly over India. It was around 1400 miles of the distance that they have to cover, right? So it was quite a lot. However, if they choose to go overseas, they can also go overseas. So they have to cross three oceans, three seas. One is Arabian Sea here, Indian Ocean down below, and then Bay of Bengal. So they have to cover this whole area to reach from one place, east to west or west to east. Just to give you a perspective, if you are sailing on a ship at an average speed of 20 knots per hour, which is pretty decent speed, by the way, normally ships don't sail at that speed, then it would take around 5.5 days to 6 days to reach from this place to this, if you are coming by sea. So basically, just to give you a perspective, they were quite geographically separated, though it was a one country, but they were geographically apart from this perspective. Well, so Pakistan was formed on the principle of two-nation theory, right? And both East and West Pakistan shared common religion. Though they shared common religion, they both were divided by distance, as I just showed you earlier. And due to India being between East and West, right? So they were separated both by land and sea. The religion was common, but their culture was different. And West Pakistan, though, was bigger in size, but East Pakistan accounted for the larger population. So East Pakistan has larger population density, which was around 75% of the total population. Now, despite representing a larger population of masses, it was West Pakistan who controlled key areas such as armed forces, civil services, diplomatic positions. All the key positions were held by West Pakistan, right? Now, even though East Pakistan accounted for 75% of all the exports and foreign earnings, so this was the more fruitful region of that country, it only received 30% of the investments and imports. So all the money that it was generating, that landmass was generating, was being procured or shifted towards West Pakistan, or the people in a higher position or a higher hierarchy was controlling the foreign exchange that was earned by East Pakistan. So in effect, West Pakistan was more like a ruler, and it was treating East Pakistan more like a colony within its own country, right? So it was this was a ruler, and West Pakistan was a ruler, and East Pakistan became the producer for that for the Western region, right? So things were already not working out between the two regions, basically. And there was already a lot of unrest and divide due to all this differential treatment that West Pakistan was giving to East Pakistan. So politically, on the political scenario, there were two major parties. One was, as I was telling earlier, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's Awami League Party. It was a major party in the eastern side. And then Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's party, which was Pakistan People's Party, that was the dominant force on the western side of the Pakistan. So in 1970, Pakistan had its National Assembly elections. Now, this election of 1970 was deemed to be, it is known to be till now one of the most free and fair elections that Pakistan has ever had till now. This is what historians believe and say. Uh, in that election, Awami League won a landslide victory of 160 seats out of 300. So this is a they Awami League won 360, and Pakistan People Party could only won 81 seats, right? But having said that, they got a clear majority, the Awami League from the East Pakistan. But Yahya Khan, he was not willing to give the power to someone from the East Pakistan, and he didn't invited who Yahya Khan was the president of Pakistan at that time. He didn't invited Sheikh Mujibur Rahman to form the government at that time. Now there was already so much unrest going on, and they were also not willing to budge on political situation here for East Pakistan. So all this didn't went down well with East Pakistan, and actually a civil war broke out. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman called for independence, liberation, and a nationwide civil disobedience movement. He made a historic speech on 7th of March 1971, which ended with this phrase that I am quoting here: "A struggle this time is a struggle for our freedom. A struggle this time is a struggle for our independence. Joy Bangla." This is a very famous speech. It is easily available on YouTube. I've shared the link here. So this speech or this event of his itself was attended by over 10 lakh people. So imagine the popularity of that man. So the Sheikh Mujibur's movement was causing much of the jitters to Pakistan, West Pakistan government. It was not getting very comfortable. Um, and it started creating more unrest in East Pakistan. So the rulers on the West Pakistan were started to feel unsettled, and they decided to do the unthinkable, which no one can even imagine. On the night of So this speech happened on 7th of March, and on just 2 weeks later, on the night of 25th of March 1971, Pakistani army launched one of the most inhuman operation in the name of Operation Searchlight. Now, this operation itself, under the light of this operation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was arrested. Around 60 to 80,000 strong Pakistani army was on rampage on the streets of Dhaka, and in fact, not only Dhaka, around entire East Bangladesh. Dhaka University was captured. They killed a huge number of students and teachers. And it was Indira Gandhi who first termed this whole thing happening in East Pakistan as genocide. So there is no real estimate, but various sources say that the death toll could be anywhere from 50,000 to 3 million during this whole operation. So this genocide now, because there was so much unrest and killing happening in barbaric killing happening within the country. So this started resulting in exodus. The mass exodus happened from Bangladesh in May 97 itself. And it started in April, and in 1 month time, in May, around 1.5 million refugees sought asylum in India. So you can imagine the number steadily started rising. There are some people waiting, so I'm just admitting, Amitji, if it's all right. So what I was saying, so the number of the refugees started growing, and it reached around 10 million by November 1971. So this refugee crisis was excessive. I mean, this was causing much pain to India. India was a poor country, right? We were a poor country. We were trying to pull up our own strings within we had our own problems, and this additional crisis was causing a lot of grief on our economy and on our country, right? So, but we never declined. We never declined the refugees on the humanitarian ground. But we're trying to raise awareness and hoping to get some attention from the world, like UN bodies and other Western countries of the world, who were sitting silent on the whole situation, and were doing nothing basically. So, and on the other side, Pakistan was blatantly posing this as an internal situation. Pakistan was trying to say that this is their internal situation, their country's own problem, and they were doing this because Yahya Khan was getting enough support from United States and China at that time. So this was a landmark moment that started changing things on the Bangladesh side. Again, because all this was internal, so no one was intervening, but things changed on June 13th, 1971, when one of the UK's premier newspaper, it still is today, the Sunday Times, published an article written by Anthony Mascarenhas. Now, Anthony was a Pakistani journalist, and this was the first-hand account of the barbaric atrocities and brutalities done by Pakistani army on the Bangladeshis and Hindu. Now, once it all came out in public and in the newspaper of UK, this made furor in the international world. This brought things out in open, and there was no hiding, there was no denying about what was happening in East Pakistan, as the whole world was reading about it now. So this article again is also very easily available. You can search the original article. You can see the original article in the full length. It is available on open internet in the PDF and web form. Just I recommend you going through that after this. Just going through the article, you will get an idea of the atrocities conducted by Pakistani army on the general public, and will give you some real goosebumps. So. All right. So what was happening on the Indian side with all the refugee crisis and all the influx of refugees and the grief on our side? We were not sitting idle. Indira Gandhi called the cabinet meeting on 28th March itself, which was just 3 days after Operation Searchlight was launched. And Indian Army Chief of Staff Sam Manekshaw was also asked to join the cabinet meeting. This was something one of its kind when the army chief was invited in the cabinet meeting. So he was asked by Indira Gandhi and a cabinet that just go inside East Pakistan and do whatever you want to do. So which meant basically waging a war against Pakistan. So he blatantly declined at the time and said, "I can assure you 100% defeat if we go in now." And he said it in front of the entire cabinet. This made Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi was taken aback by his blunt candidness. He was very blunt in saying this, and she had to dismiss the cabinet meeting and asked Sam Manekshaw to stay back. Now, Sam Manekshaw, being Manekshaw, he said that before you start saying something, Madam Prime Minister, I can give you my resignation. He was thinking that Indira Gandhi might have felt offended by his blatant candidness, right? But credit goes to Indira Gandhi. She did not mean that. She asked if what he was saying is true, and why he was saying like that. So Sam Manekshaw then explained that it is his responsibility to tell her the truth, and it is the truth that right now, if we go to war with Pakistan in May 1971, then there is a real chances of defeat, because there were multiple factors for that. Because Pakistan could open Western Front. So imagine this is the Eastern Front that Indira Gandhi was asking him to go on war, but Pakistan was very strong on the Western Front. They can open Western Front, and that time being the harvest time in April, May, it was a harvest time in Punjab. Farmers will suffer a lot, and we could in fact face famine in due course of time. Second reason could be China could meddle in, and China could open a third front, and we were not prepared to face China at that time, and Pakistan. And most importantly, it was monsoon season was about to come in May, June, and eastern region of the Pakistan gets flooded. It becomes damp and a marshy land during the monsoon season, and Indian army can be easily stopped due to all that weather conditions as well. So definitely the timing was not on our side at the moment. So did we do nothing? What did we do? The war happened in December, but we were not sitting idle throughout those 8 months, 7 months, right? We were preparing a ground during all those times. India on this occasion was playing its card very close to its chest and was gearing up for one of the most formidable and proudest execution of events This war, or the preparation of the war, saw remarkable camaraderie between government, armed forces. India was, India was prepping up for the war on all its fronts, be it political, military, or diplomatic front. So we were preparing our grounds for all these months. How? So, for example, in around June 1971, Indian Chief of Army issued a secret order to GOC Eastern Command to initiate a campaign against East Pakistan in the name of Operation Instruction 52. Now, the aim of operation was to, as you can see here, 3 bullet points, to raise provincial government of Bangladesh against, to rally people of East Pakistan in support for the Sheikh Mujibur's liberation movement, then to raise and equip East Bangladeshi cadres for guerrilla operation, and to ensure that guerrilla forces were working towards were creating enough problem for Pakistan military or Pakistani armed forces, right? So then brigadier, and later he became Major General Sujan Singh Uban. He was tasked to lead the Special Frontier Force. So this is the logo of Special Frontier Force that you're seeing in front of your screen. This was a special force specialized to do covert operations. Mainly, this force was not front-ending the war. So this force was specialized to do covert operations, mainly in and around China, post 1962 war. And this Special Frontier Force played an exceptional role in 1971 war, and was active behind the scene in their low-lying operation that broke Pakistan's army backbone and agitated Pakistan to launch an offensive, which was strategically very helpful to India. Amitji, I'm conscious of the time here. Let me know if I have to pause or stop.
I think we can keep a logical point somewhere,
Yeah,
Abhinavji.
I'll stop when the war will start. I think it's 2 or 3 more slides.
Yeah, that's
So so then we were also supporting Mukti Bahini. We must have all heard of Mukti Bahini. Mukti Bahini played a crucial role in the independence of Bangladesh. Mukti Bahini was a local volunteer group that was already fighting for Bangladesh independence, and was comprised of 2 groups. So Mukti Bahini had 2 groups, Nomitto Bahini and Gono Bahini. Nomitto is very similar in Hindi of Nimit, which is regular forces. So this comprised of regular armed forces of armed soldiers from paramilitary, military, and police forces from East Pakistan. So those soldiers that have left Pakistani army and joined Nomitto Bahini. And the Gono Bahini, as the name suggests, Gono means normal. Regular people. This was a regular people force comprised of civilians. Now, Indian Army supported and trained these men. Indian forces initially set up 6 camps for recruiting and training volunteers, which were soon swamped. So you can imagine that at one camp, some 3,000 men had to wait up to 2 months for the induction. So this was a time when Indian training operation were producing around 20,000 guerrillas every month. And by the end of November 1971, over 83,000 Gono Bahini fighters were already trained. So this was a massive force that was between. On the international front, apart from political and military, India was also doing a lot of diplomatic efforts in the international arena. However, before taking a look at the Indian diplomatic efforts, let's take a look at the then international arena. Now, I have taken this slide from my previous 1965 presentation, as all the players are still similar. The relations were more or less same. But the only change happened was the bonhomie increased between Pakistan, China, and US. Right. So this is because it was 1962 slide, so I have just added a couple of more things so to reflect the relation between Pakistan and China and US here. So tensions. India was at a strategic disadvantageous position at that time because we were a non-aligned partner, and US had a change of heart towards China to counter Soviet Union during the Cold War. And Henry Kissinger, that we spoke about in our earlier slides, he was the then National Security Advisor of Nixon administration, made a secret visit to China to meet Zhou Enlai. This was a time of Cold War, so he visited. Pakistan facilitated a secret visit to China, and Henry Kissinger visited China. He also visited India and Pakistan during the same visit. And picture says 1,000 words. In this pic on the right, you can see presidential advisor Henry Kissinger chatting to Aga Muhammad Yahya Khan. And on the right hand side, you can see Indira Gandhi chatting to the Russian counterpart. So, so he on his visit, he showed his inclination towards Pakistan. Henry Kissinger or the US showed his inclination towards Pakistan and avoided joining any international condemnation of Pakistan's action in East Pakistan. US continued to provide both diplomatic and military support to Pakistan throughout the crisis in East Pakistan, let alone condemn it. And in July 1971, Kissinger also visited New Delhi and warned India of no US support should China attack at any point in time. So India, on the other hand, was getting isolated. It was getting pressure because pressure was mounting because of the immigration crisis. It was not getting any international support, and it was already a non-aligned member. So it went ahead. And formed a very famous treaty, and it came to it played a really important part in the rescue of India or the war of 1971. This treaty was called Indo-Soviet Treaty of Peace, Friendship and Cooperation. It was signed between India and Soviet Union in 1971 as a to specify mutually to have a mutual strategic cooperation between the two countries. So this ensured that if any country or if any country attacked India or Soviet Union, the other will take position and help remediate or help stand next to it and help alleviate the condition, and will fight beside that country. So we'll see in my later slides how Russia helped India during the 1971 war. So this was a strategic treaty that Indira Gandhi signed with Russia, and yeah, it really helped us. So while Pakistan army was continuing its barbarous activities in East Pakistan, India, as we saw, was preparing up for an offensive during all these months. And in November 1971, we really started escalating our low-intensity warfare. We started assisting Mukti Bahini more, and it was already causing problems to Pakistan. Indian army unofficially was already inside Pakistan in many places and causing much damage in East Pakistan. And all this made Yahya Khan lost his patience, and he opened an all-out attack on India on its western front. He thought that by opening up offensive on the India on the western front, which was the more powerful, which was the stronghold of Pakistan, Yahya Khan would be able to relieve some pressure which they were facing on the eastern wing. And they opened an attack on December 3rd, 1971.
Pakistan launched a full-scale war against us. The Pakistan Air Force suddenly struck at our airfield in Amritsar, Pathankot, Srinagar, Avantipur, Uttarlai, Jodhpur, Ambala and Agra.
This was the then Prime Minister of Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi of India, making announcement on All India Radio about Pakistan declaring a war on India. And Pakistan launched an attack on Indian airfields. And I think I'll pause here and I'll take my journey forward in some later sessions. And there's a lot to cover, but yeah, I'll take a pause for today here, Amitji.
Thank you, Abhinavji. It's a brilliant start. At least our Kishore and adults to read more about this war so that you can relate all the events when we discuss in the next Shakha here. Yeah. Can we all have a big